Hey everybody, welcome back to the IGN Movies Podcast, Keeping It Real. Jim and Chris here to bring you the week that was in genre movie news and rumors.
Yes,
got a lot to talk about this week. Actually, initially
Many
I was like,
things.
oh, it'll be a light thing, and then when I'm actually looking over the stuff, we actually have a fair bit of stuff. So let's actually start with last weekend's box office. And not really talking about Ant-Man staying #1 with just under 25 million.
Except for the fact that I was totally right and I deserve praise. That's all.
Exactly. Well, let them know in the comments below how much you love them. But let's talk about Adam Sandler and Pixels. Now that movie opened in second place with just around 25. It was about 24 million, and it was essentially Sandler's lowest since Jack and Jill. And the thing, you know, Sandler's never had an opening that was over 50 million, right?
Yeah.
But some of his strongest showings in recent years have been ensemble ones, the Grown Ups movies, especially Grown Ups 2 was, I believe, opened bigger domestically than the first one. But for his individual movies, it's certainly been sort of diminishing returns.
Right.
Now you can't even say, well, he just put him with a great ensemble because this one opened so low.
Yeah, and you also can't say that home video is necessarily going to save him. That used to be one of the things, you know, something like Grandma's Boy didn't open big, but it kind of became a cult hit.
Any chance for him to talk about Grandma's Boy?
No, but seriously, like...
It's on Netflix now, by the way.
That's the kind of thing where, like, you invest this amount of money, you don't make it in the theater. Years ago, it used to be like DVD, Blu-ray is going to make up for that, and then you have this, you know, this thing that keeps performing and performing. Office Space is like that too. Just didn't really do much in the theater. So, but now like the tide has sort of shifted for that, and we're not selling as many Blu-rays. But we were talking a little bit earlier, and we were talking about Netflix as an option because that's what's coming up for him.
Well, he has that huge deal with them where I believe he's making 4 or 5 movies just for them. And the first one they've done is called Ridiculous Six, and it's like a Western comedy, and that's coming up, and you know, the TCA's, the Television Critics Association's kind of annual sort of, I don't want to say upfront because that's a different thing, but like they get together. Eric Goldman is there right now covering it, and they basically hawk their wares coming up for the coming season.
The networks get together and say, this is what we've got.
And Netflix now is there for streaming. And the boss, what is his name? Ted Sarandos?
Yeah,
or
I think so,
like that, was asked about the Sandler Netflix deal in light of Pixels not doing well. And he's like, we're not worried. He's still a huge box office draw internationally. But really, in a way, Netflix is still like the best thing that could have happened for Sandler at this point in his career.
It is that version of what I was talking about. It is that sort of like, oh, I'm just gonna, you know, check this out. It only costs me $4. In the case of Netflix, this even seems like a lower barrier to entry because most people pay like $10 a month and it feels free. You know, you're like, just take it out of my account. It feels free, so like anything on Netflix, I think I could make an Olympic sport out of how I scroll through Netflix. It's just like I
usually just sit there for 2 hours scrolling through it and then fall asleep. So
that's like that's exactly it. That's the movie to me. I'm like, oh look at all these movies that exist in the world.
Channel Guide, the movie.
But if there's no barrier to entry, that is the perfect environment for Adam Sandler, and that's like. That is not like as meant to be faint praise or whatever. I'm just saying like his movies are appeal to a wide demographic. Yeah. But you know, if something doesn't look enough to spend $50 at the theater, if you're like on a date, then you know Netflix is your option. Right. And so I think you know a movie coming out there like if we were talking to our producer Kyle, he was saying if Pixels were on Netflix today, you would go and just
It'd be a very different conversation probably that we'd be having.
Yeah, and it might, you know, I think it's similar to what happened with the Seth Rogen, James Franco movie. The Interview, yeah. I was like, what is that called?
That really important movie from last year that crippled the nation.
Oh my God, I was thinking The Brink. That's all that was on my head.
Oh God, yeah.
So The Interview, it's kind of like the Interview. You know, if that wasn't available digitally everywhere, I don't think that movie would have had. I mean, there's obviously all kinds of stuff swirling around that. Right. But you know, I don't think that movie would have had as big a reception.
Well, I mean, for Sandler, you know, his key demo is getting older. They have kids. His movies kind of geared towards families to a certain degree. Yeah. You know, sometimes they're a little too crude for that, but Netflix really does seem like it can save Sandler, because if he just stuck with theatrical, I feel like the perception now is that he's toast. He's radioactive. Like he makes bad movies and people don't want to see them.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, I think people, felt really burned by Jack and Jill. Like that, did not like that movie
Wasn't
at all.
Pacino in that?
And I don't even.
I think he was.
I did not see that movie, but like people felt like that was a real sort of step down in his career, and now
That's
like
saying
Pixels
something,
and
too.
Pixels just not like performing. I think is another thing,
And he did do that smaller indie film a couple of months ago, The Cobbler. That's
Right.
also on Netflix right now, and but nobody saw that, and it got kind of dumped. It didn't get great reviews, but it was still like he was doing something a little different.
It's impossible to know too. Like
Yeah.
you can, I mean, Netflix will know if after the
Yeah.
first movie that runs, they are like, well, we're gonna opt out of the rest of this deal. Then you'll know that stuff doesn't perform. But I think it's gonna be fine. I think
Yeah.
Ridiculous 6 is gonna get promoted everywhere. I have right by my house. There's a Netflix billboard, and it changes every month. And I think that thing is going to be full of Adam Sandler movies
yeah.
over time. I'm sure we're going to see a lot of promotion for that stuff. And it is. It's like the perfect home for his stuff. And I think if Pixels were there, like first of all, they wouldn't have spent. They're not. Netflix is not in the business of spending, $160 million to bring a movie to Netflix.
Right.
But, I think they save that kind of budget for their series and stuff like that.
House of Cards.
But, something, a $30 million movie on Netflix, like, that brings cachet.
Yeah.
They're replacing their business. It used to be about everybody else's stuff.
Yeah.
Soon it will be about, like, you get a subscription to watch all the stuff that only we can bring you.
Right. Now, not to get off Sandler, and we can talk about this maybe more next week.
Who would ever want to get off Sandler?
But I was thinking maybe, Netflix could be a good option for somebody like Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know? But maybe we'll talk about that next week, because we do actually have a reader email.
Honestly, I think he's making some good decisions. I think Maggie was a cool choice for him.
I feel like Maggie would have been better served, though, released on something like Netflix.
Exactly. So like something like that would be a good option. The Terminator movie, I don't think was his fault. I think, like that didn't, perform, and it wasn't well received, but widely everybody was like, he was up for it. He brought what he needed to bring to that. So he and Stallone are interesting examples of like, what if they did something on Netflix series? I think people would tune in. Well,
back to Sandler, though, we do have in Pixels, we do have an email from Matt who says, Yo, that's how
Matt.
He opens. In the last episode, y'all talked about how pop culture, he actually writes y'all,
I love that.
talked about how pop culture may be moving away from 80s references in favor of ones from the 90s. Now, it could be that Pixels just actually sucked and 80s references are still relevant, but is it possible the people behind Ready Player One, the movie, have taken note of the failure? Could we see an amended story in Ready Player One that has more current references? And then, keep up the good work. Been a fan of IGN since Film Force on IGN.com. That's going back a ways, so thank you, Matt. So what do you think? Do you think Pixels will affect Ready Player One?
No. I mean, I think Ready Player One is its own thing. And I think the hardest thing about Ready Player One, which we discussed a bunch of times, is how they're going to get rights to all the stuff that they need to get rights to.
Yeah,
but
Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, I was going to say that hidden weapon called Steven Spielberg. And that's why I think it's going to be okay as well. Like, I feel like he's going to get the tone of it right. He was at his best operating at a very, very high level in the 80s, so he understands what was good about the 80s. And hopefully he'll bring that to that movie.
I'd love somebody to sit down with Spielberg and say, what was good about the 80s? And he goes, me.
But it's true. It's totally true. But the other thing I would say about that is, Ready Player One is way more of a Willy Wonka style story than it is even. So I feel like the appeal of that is not just references. I think references will help tell the story in a very small way, kind of like Wreck-It Ralph. Wreck-It Ralph used characters, from the fabric of video game history, but the main characters in that game, or in that movie and the game, don't exist in video game culture. It's like, so you
need something that you were going to latch onto anyways.
Exactly, and I think the source material, the novel is so good that I feel like it'll be fine. It'll carry through.
Okay. Well, we want to know what you think about Adam Sandler, Pixels, Netflix. Is Netflix the salvation of Adam Sandler? I want to know from you guys.
Dun.
Let us know in the comments below. Let's move on to what was possibly the biggest shockwave in nerd news this week. Do that again. I
don't know.
Channing Tatum, his deal for the Gambit movie is reportedly falling apart, according to The Wrap. Nobody can quite seem to put their finger on what happened, but I think it rhymes with money. That's what I'm thinking. Look, he was just
Why
at
does
Comic-Con.
everyone want money? Because it's money.
I was just thinking, he was at Comic-Con a couple of weeks ago, out there touting Gambit. You know, he's up on stage with the Fox X-Men and Deadpool people and everything. We're all like, and he even does a little Mon Chéri line and all that. What happened, do you think?
Okay, first of all, I want to mention a moment that happened on stage there. All the Avengers, or not Avengers, all the X-Men. So sorry. All the X-Men there on stage. Fantastic Four. All those Fox heroes on stage. And Stan Lee needs help off the stage. Who helped him? Channing Tatum.
Gentleman
and a scholar. Love that guy. Anyway.
And a male stripper.
So
there's nothing he can't do.
The best kind. All right. So if it is money, they're gonna work it out.
I mean, they have to look. Fox has to blink because they need Channing Tatum for Gambit more than Channing Tatum needs Gambit. Channing Tatum is on a career high right now, and he brings to the table, even if some fans don't like his casting, he's the reason why that movie's going to get made.
Yeah, well, I agree, and who else could you put in that role right now? I mean, for sure, I think Gambit purists, of which I am not one, because you know my feelings on Gambit, but Gambit purists didn't like him to begin with in the role, I think. But there is just nobody else out there, I think, that's going to get that movie made. You're going to take it.
McConaughey's too old.
Yeah, and you're going to take it and drop it down, a notch, because Channing Tatum's one of the most recognizable people in the world, one of the most bankable stars right now, if there is still such a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, and what it does to sort of Fox's universe is interesting too, because he would then be, let's see if Jackman drops out, and if
Jackman
Lawrence
is definitely hanging up the claws. He has said that a bunch of times.
That's true.
In fact, on the stage at Comic-Con, he came out to say goodbye. And Jennifer Lawrence, she can say, well, maybe I'm open to another one. Nah, she's out.
I think if any time we could potentially see Jennifer Lawrence, it wouldn't be in a starring role. It'd be like in a pop-up cameo. Yeah.
And also, I mean, people are like, well, what about Fassbender and McAvoy? Well, X-Men First Class, I believe, was the lowest grossing of the X-Men movies. X-Men Origins Wolverine might be the most hated, but it made a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you bring back, if Channing Tatum drops out, do you bring back Taylor Kitsch?
I think
he was, if you guys don't remember, he was Gambit in X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Well, he's not bankable. That's the problem. So he's a fine actor. I think he's doing a good, as much as True Detective is kind of a mess right now. I think he's holding it down in that. He's done some good stuff in indie movies. I even liked him in John Carter. I mean, we've talked about John Carter 1,000 times on this, but I think he's a fine actor. I don't think though that he is the magical element that's going to make that movie pop. I feel like that element was or is Channing Tatum, and that's why I think they're going to get out the checkbooks for this one. Magic Mike.
Yeah, no, I mean, he probably wants a bigger cut of merchandising or profits, and give it to him. He is he's the future of that franchise if Jackman is truly gone, and I just feel like Channing Tatum will help make that movie an event if you don't have him in there.
Everybody wants the Robert Downey Jr. deal, everybody wants to, as the movies go forward, be secure.
It used to be the Jack Nicholson deal.
Yeah, exactly.
And then RDJ came along.
He came along
and did his own.
And seriously, he's probably making more money per Marvel movie than anybody's ever made for a movie, I think.
Jeremy Renner makes more off flipping houses. He seriously does.
Really?
Yeah. That's that's his mutant ability, is to flip a house.
He flipped that cabin.
He flips a lot of stuff. So, I mean, Gambit basically I don't think is going to happen without Tatum. And
Yeah, I think
they're supposed to film in October with Rupert Wyatt directing.
I think the deal will fall apart. You know, like I think the whole, you know, or not the deal, the production will fall apart.
I mean,
if
it's
the deal
supposed to
falls
come
apart.
out in. Oh, damn it! I think it's. Is it 2016 or 2017?
Well, if
I wanna say it was
if
next
it's going
year.
to shoot in October, like there's a lot of eggs in that basket already. That kind of, you know, like it.
But it happens a lot. The star pulls out at the 11th hour and everything just collapses.
It will happen, and I'm sure they're just crunching numbers right now. But a deal is falling apart in the trades doesn't necessarily mean.
That means somebody's agent was like, put the pressure on.
Yeah, it's the same as like, you know, like any deal that's out there. It's like at the last moment somebody can make a power play to make something happen in their favor. So, you know, I wouldn't write him off, but I do think that if he pulls out, it's either going to drop down in status or they're just going to completely take it off the table. Yeah. They just have so many people already signed up for it.
I don't know who the hell you would cast to replace him. And I know we just kind of touched on it, but like, it's not like, I could think of a few people if Fassbender was like, you know what, I'm done with Magneto. I love him as Magneto, and I think he's a fine actor. But I could think of some other character actors that could step in, and younger character actors. Whereas Gambit is a very specific type, and I just don't think you can just grab any old actor. You know
Certainly not any old actor.
You know, Pacino, get in there. Hoorah! He just throws the cards. Well, we want to know.
That was actually more Stan Lee.
Gerard Depardieu. Giant, fat,
Gerard Depardieu as Gambit.
Putin-loving Gerard Depardieu.
I would love that movie. It would just be such a different
Gambit,
movie.
the later old man Gambit. You know? Well, we want to know from you guys. Does Gambit need Channing Tatum more than Channing Tatum needs Gambit? And who do you get if Channing Tatum drops out? Do you even want to see a Gambit movie?
Do you even want Gerard Depardieu?
Exactly. How many eggs should you put in that basket? So let us know in the comments. Let's move on to some stuff going on in the DC movie universe this week. Let's start with
the extended DC
universe? Zack Snyder, and I'm going to just read some of his quotes here. You know, Empire magazine, their cover story this month is BVS. All right, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, and Zack Snyder. You know, a pretty lengthy interview, so I'm just going to read a little bit because he talked about how BVS is, you know, kind of establishing JLA and Suicide Squad, and that, you know, he said that Batman is indeed. It was either him or producer Charles Roven who said that, you know, Batman's the reason why most of the members of the Suicide Squad are in prison, and that you're going to see, you know, that, and we saw this in the trailer with Batman's on the Joker's card, that's all kind of prequel stuff.
That's why when you're a cop, you never want to actually end up in prison.
That's
Same reason.
That's right.
You're in there with the criminals you put in.
You hear that, you dirty cops? Watching, keeping it real. We're setting you straight. All right, so here's what Snyder said. He said of Ben Affleck's Batman, we are playing him 45 or 46. So look at Ben Affleck playing 3 years older. That's acting, people. I'm just saying. He put a gray streak in his hand.
He's gotta understand the references. Like
I don't think
he might have watched different.
He
cartoons.
had to go to like some art meetings and stuff just to get wrap his head around it. So Snyder says he has been Batman for 20 years. All the history is there. Was there Robin? This is clearly an interview that was probably done on set before the trailer came out. So. He's been Batman for 20 years. All the history is there. Was there a Robin at one point, one time? Possibly. We not know from the trailer. Yes. We want to assume that Batman has reached this point in his life and career as a superhero. And Superman represents a sort of philosophical change. He's a paradigm shift for Batman. And he's basically saying as Batman, I've been fighting criminals all my life trying to find justice, and now I'm confronted with a concept that is transcendent to me. In the face of Superman, a man robbing a bank doesn't matter. He's having a crisis of conscience. Am I really just a vigilante who stalks the alleys of Gotham? It is rich stuff that he deals with. Ben does an amazing job. And then he also just said, like, wouldn't really elaborate on Jason Momoa as Aquaman in the film. Sounds kind of like an extended cameo, just basically saying you'll understand he exists. So what do you think of sort of that take on Superman as Batman being sort of a philosophical kind of struggle for him? I kind of like that.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, obviously Batman broods a lot. You know, he's got a lot in his head, and he's always thinking about, you know, the world, and he's
what can make me unhappy now?
he's always thinking about justice and where justice is going wrong. So like, I feel like the accord they're going to reach
Justice
at the end.
is the name of my dog. That's what I'm wondering. Sorry, I don't know.
I feel like they're going to reach this accord like they did at the end of Man of Steel with the military and Superman, where they're just kind of like, hey, yeah, you know, maybe you're okay.
You can be my wingman anytime.
Yeah. But I mean, when is that going to happen? I think they're going to have to team up partway through the movie.
I think it's going to be end of Act 2. I think they said. I think the trailers, people are thinking they're going to be fighting the entire time. I really think that's a sequence or two. You know.
You know what's going to happen is like at the end of Act 2, there's going to be a dawn of justice.
It'll dawn on them.
The justice.
Zack Snyder did kind of say that the title means is speaking to that of like they're not just a setup for Justice League, but sort of the way you're what is justice like for Batman. You know, Batman is kind of, depending on how you want to look at it, is the antagonist of this movie.
Right.
You know, but
for a while until Jesse.
It's like a Western
Eisenberg shows up
where
in
you
his
got a couple
sneakers.
of guys like, you know, the outlaw and the lawman who have to team up because there's bigger desperados or the railroad or whatever, you know, kind of the way I look at it. What else is going on in the DCU? Oh, Chris Pine reportedly signing on to be Steve Trevor in the Wonder Woman movie.
There's a rumor that was true.
Yeah, I mean, look, there was that whole fanboy notion that, no, he's really up for Green Lantern, and they're just trying to, like, confuse. Oh, come on, stop trying to, like, invent these conspiracies, people.
Well, now he's off the table now for Green Lantern, which is, like, just as important, I think. Justice important, I don't know. Anyway, I actually wanted to go back to Momoa for 1 second because I think what we're supposing, what now is pretty much been confirmed, is that the events at the end of Man of Steel set up Batman. So we had also sort of opined.
Set up Justice League?
Well, set up Justice League, set up, you know, Batman being against Superman at the beginning, right? So, but we had also sort of opined that what happens to the Indian Ocean. With the world engine or whatever is going to be what affects Aquaman.
Yeah, there's
and
been
maybe
that
brings him
rumor
to the
that
struggle.
Aquaman was none too happy with that. There's also rumors too that, again, rumors, so it's not a spoiler, rumor that he might be in Amanda Waller's little prison of metahumans too, Aquaman.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see. Or that, you know, maybe Lex Luthor has him locked away or something, like he has General Zod.
That's not what you do to the god of the seas.
Nope. You don't. I do wonder, like, will Aquaman actually be named Arthur Curry in this? Like, are they just going to call him, what up, Ak?
What up, Ak? I don't think that won't be said. But
I mean, I just don't think Aquaman, you want to, you know, hand me that thing? Or Aquaman, what's going on?
I'm sure he'll have some more, I'm guessing he's going to have some kind of like more exotic name, you know, Atlantean. And maybe Arthur Curry is the way that, you know, people, it's like he adopts you know, a land name. I don't know. So Steve Trevor, cool. I don't really have anything to say about it.
Chris Pine, because, and we said this before, like it's kind of a no pressure role for him. The pressure is still on Gal Gadot, and we know he can do this role, and it's kind of like it just helps lift his profile, but he doesn't really have anything at stake. If this movie bombs, it's not really going to hurt him.
Yeah, no.
Not as much as if like the next Star Trek bombs, you know. It's more, he's not front and center of Wonder Woman, you know.
Yeah, and I think it really is like the Wonder Woman movie. I feel, you know, everybody's like, oh, they have to make it right and all this stuff, but if Wonder Woman in and of itself bombs, the one thing that I don't want to happen is for that to bomb and then for everybody to be like, oh, female superheroes don't work, because Lucy's already proven it can work, you know. So you know, if that movie doesn't come together the right way, it's not really the fault of like a female heroine. But you know, like I kind of feel like it doesn't matter to anything. Like if Wonder Woman fails, the only thing that it will affect is that perception.
Right.
It's not going to affect any Justice League movies, really.
I mean, they're going to make those things regardless.
They're going to make them all, you know? Well, maybe not all of them, but the Justice League movies for sure.
Let's see, what else? Yada, yada. Let's talk about Marvel, because why the hell not? So Tilda Swinton said this week that she still doesn't know if she's going to play the Ancient One as a man or a woman.
I love
think
that.
That's kind of interesting, you know?
I mean,
what if she just goes back and forth? Like, because if you're a magical being, why can't you be, she's a woman at this point, then she's a dude? Like, you know, it's almost like body switching all the time.
You know, that quote just, I don't know why, but all I can think about is that Bob Dylan movie where Kate Blanchett like played Bob Dylan, and I was like, you know, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. I think it's
fun,
a fun concept. I like that she's in that role. I think that's an interesting role for her.
Some more stuff coming out of the TCAs. Stephen S. DeKnight was the Daredevil showrunner, was asked by the press, and Eric Goldman is there, and you get some of these quotes as well, that, you know, there's a reason why he said something along the lines of like, there's only one character they've had to change because of the Marvel movies, and that was Night Nurse, which led to speculation that maybe Rachel McAdams, who's also acknowledged that she's in early talks for Doctor Strange, it's not set.
Well, weirdly,
that she could be Night Nurse, the Linda Carter character, and not Clea.
That Night Nurse news, that rumor, came out slightly before Stephen DeKnight even addressed that. So it was kind of interesting that people were talking about Rachel McAdams for Night Nurse, and then the next day, I think Stephen DeKnight was like, "Yeah, we couldn't use a Night Nurse." Yeah. The timing was kind of curious to me.
I'm sure somebody was, asking because of that.
But yeah, I mean, it's interesting that they wanted, of all characters, we want Night Nurse.
Well, they just reprinted it, and then isn't she going to be in? There's some other upcoming comic event that she's going to be part of. But I actually just bought the Night Nurse reprint. And so I guess I could kind of see her as being like somebody who used to work with Doctor Strange when he was at the hospital, when he was a real doctor. And maybe she's sort of the eyes of the audience who gets taken into this. Like she's somehow targeted by the evil forces, Mordo, whoever.
Not to harp on True Detective, but I think Rachel McAdams has done a decent job this season despite some tough material. And I think doing True Detective has opened her up to different kinds of things. You know, I think she was kind of stuck in rom-com zone for a while. And so now, like, having her sort of join the MCU would be interesting in that role, I think.
I think she's a really good actress, by the way. I forgot to say something about BVS real quick. Because remember we had mentioned the thing about Superman's secret identity, and especially now, like, where the whole world has seen Henry Cavill's face.
Right.
And what a face. And just
you're going to read that email?
Yes, this is fantastic. This is from
great email.
Mickey. And he says, "Hey, guys.
And thanks for the Twitter shout-out, Mickey.
Yeah. I just like to respond to a comment Jim made in episode 293 about Clark's lack of effort to hide his secret identity in the recent BVS trailer. Jim, it is my genuine pleasure to be the pedantic comic book geek who writes in to tell you that one of Superman's lesser-known powers is hypnosis, and the lenses in his glasses are made from a material found in the ship that brought him to Earth that actually amplifies this ability and controls his heat and X-ray vision so that he can hide his identity from large groups of people at a time. That said, in the new DCU, probably won't bother explaining such details."
I don't know. Maybe they could. I mean, that's a throwaway line, seriously, in the script.
Yeah.
Like,
hey, thanks for the magic glasses, Dad.
I don't know who he would say it to. He says it in the mirror. Thanks, Father. These are coming in quite handy.
And then when they cut away, all they see is Jay Baruchel or something, like, you know. But I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, I mean, that explains a lot. And actually, you know, it's one of those things that I think if you're not, like, the world's biggest Superman fan. Like, I'm not a huge, like, Superman in the comics fan. I've liked several of the movies. I love the Donner movies. And as you guys know, if you've listened to the podcast, I really like Man of Steel as well. I'm one of those guys.
Yeah, I liked it. I gave it a good review.
But I have, it's always annoyed me about Superman that it's like, come on, glasses aren't even that stupid mask.
Christopher Reeve, you bought it because he created, it was just through acting, the power of acting, he created this whole other persona. And yeah, you could see why people wouldn't necessarily put two and two together. Even Brandon Routh's Superman and Clark Kent there wasn't that much distinction.
Right.
He just parted his hair a little differently and wore glasses. But
that's not fooling anyone,
you
Brandon.
know. But Cavill's Clark Kent reminds me much more like the traditional, like, 70s comics Superman, where it was just like, hey, you know, it's just he looked the exact same, except he pushed the cowlick up, you know.
By the way, every single person, man or woman, is going to notice Henry Cavill coming into the newspaper office and be like,
you don't even know who this is right now. Wait for it.
No, I know.
Here I am.
I'm saying, if you're Henry Cavill, you look like that dude. You're getting noticed by everyone, and you know, like, if it's a social media like obsessed world that we live in, there would be so many people who think that Superman is hot, and it would be like, oh my God, Superman's like the biggest
look what
hottie
happens
ever.
on like Smoking Gun. Some guy's mugshot goes up, and suddenly he has like all these, you know, jail lovers, or wait, that's wrong.
Jail lovers.
Next on Jail Lovers.
We're going to start a new podcast soon. Jail Lovers. Dawn of Justice.
Oh yeah, there's a dong of justice in that one.
Did you say dong of justice?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Look, people, this is why you watch this show, for moments like this.
A moment like this.
Hey, you know what nobody expected? Christopher Nolan.
Me to sing Kelly Clarkson? I don't know.
I didn't expect. Actually, I'm getting used to you surprising me like that. Christopher Nolan's next movie is going to be a documentary on the Quay brothers, stop-motion animators, and it's going to be part of a, I think it's Film Forum in New York, like a festival they're doing there, and it'll be on the Blu-ray release of that. Kind of what people expected him to follow up Interstellar with.
What was awesome is, you know, we posted that story, and then in the comments, everybody's like, I will watch anything this man does. And I kind of feel the same way. It's like, he's an interesting enough filmmaker that anything he does is going to be interesting to me, I think. You know?
I mean, he's still writing like a, you know, working on a feature, narrative feature. But yeah, I think it's kind of interesting that he's like, let me just go do a little documentary real quick.
I think there's a sort of palate cleansing that needs to go on with directors, where they need to say, like, you know, because making a movie is such a super involved, long, grueling process. You know, even with Joss Whedon, in between the Avengers movies, he made that quick
the little
Shakespeare movie. And I think people, when they are bogged down in these really, really big studio projects, it feels like a lot of juggling. I think sometimes people want to take on something a little more quiet.
Like Tarantino went and directed a couple of TV episodes.
Yeah. And then guested on American Idol, which I love. He's like well, I mean, I guess American Idol's over for all intents and purposes, but he was like the hugest American Idol fan, which I love about him.
Let's talk about the Ghostbusters reboot. Not the one with Melissa McCarthy, but the other oft-rumored male reboot.
Mixed
team.
Yeah.
Drew Pearce, the writer of Iron Man 3 and I believe Ghost Protocol, was interviewed this week, and he said that it's still in the works, that, you know, and he did confirm, even though Chris Pratt denied it, that Chris Pratt and Channing Tatum are the ones that they would really like to see kind of be in this movie.
I think when you make, what he's saying basically in his quote is, I made the Bible for this thing. You know, so Bible, if you guys don't know, is just kind of like everything.
An old ancient text.
It's everything that is like what the movie is. You know, it's like, here are the characters, here's the idea, here's some of the stuff, and then included in this sometimes are like thoughts on who the actors might be and so forth. So a couple of things that jumped out at me from his statement were, number one, he said it's a mixed crew. So it's not just going to be men. It's not going to be like the all-male Ghostbusters. It'll be a mixed crew. The other thing is, he said, you know, it's early days still.
Yeah.
You know, I'm making something that we hope gets picked up. But it's curious. Normally you don't have writers say, yeah, this is who we want for...
Well, yeah, I mean,
sometimes,
especially, it's there. Maybe there's a little bit more going on there than we know. Maybe there's some deal stuff going on, but I mean, I feel like maybe that's another reason why that Gambit thing might be falling apart. Is maybe Tatum's getting offered more money to go do a
It's an interesting confluence of news, certainly.
Of timing and everything.
Yeah, and you know, it might also be, I mean, I think he feels free to talk about it because everybody knows that
the Sony hack revealed.
The Sony hack revealed, like, this is something that they were going for, so.
Yeah. Let's talk about a video game movie in development, Five Nights at Freddy's. Gil Keenan, the director of the Poltergeist remake, and he also did Monster House and City of Ember, is reportedly going to direct the movie. What do you think about the choice of him, and what do you think about a Five Nights at Freddy's movie?
We've talked about it a little bit before. It's one of those games that is like an open canvas for somebody to do something with, really.
Yeah.
Because it's not like there's a ton of story there. So it's really just taking the idea of creepy Chuck E. Cheese characters in a scary setting and turning that into a movie. Now, he took Monster House and turned that into a hell of a movie.
I like that one a lot.
And it was scary. It was a good.
It was
like
one of
a
the
good
earliest
scary
motion
kids
capture
movie.
movies.
Yeah, it was like a great. It was a great movie, and ultimately, I feel like that is what you should look to see whether or not he could do Five Nights at Freddy's. Not, I mean, like Poltergeist, whatever.
Did you ever end up seeing the Poltergeist?
I haven't seen the remake.
I did. Not fan of, I didn't hate it. I thought it had moments, but there were more narrative problems with that as opposed to like directorial problems with it. And I just felt like it's a movie that never quite justified its own existence. But you know, he gets good performances out of people, and so I think and frankly, he could probably, you know, he kind of needs that gig, you know, because that at least. If it's sold, we'll see how Goosebumps does, because maybe that's sort of like family-friendly but scary kind of thing, you know. Well, is Five Nights at Freddy? I haven't played it. Is it a kid-friendly kind of game?
I mean, it's like I'm
sure
the kids
messed in the head.
Yeah, I'm sure kids play it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like so scary that kids don't play it. And you know, kids like to be scared anyway to some extent. I certainly did. You know, like I rented all, or I rented. There's this thing called the library, people. And I used to check books out from it. And the Tales to Keep You Awake. What's the name of that book? The book with all the crazy, awesome drawings.
The
Tales
from the Crypt?
No. They're making a movie of it. I can't remember. What's it called? Forget. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, says Kyle.
Said a voice from the darkness.
Says Kyle, our producer. Thank you. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
They are turning
no, like that was something I sought out actively when I was a kid, and
Never read it.
Very, very scary. Even the drawings now still evoke like that feeling in me a little bit. So
do they have like Edward Gorey type artwork?
It's really like surreal, dreamlike kind of. Just I don't know. It's really creepy,
kind of like Neil Gaiman-esque kind of stuff.
Yeah, kind of.
All right. Interesting.
Yeah,
I guess
I mean, you
me as a grown-ass
man,
man, I'll go read this scary kids book.
Yeah. So I mean, yes, I think it is one of those things. It's kind of like a lot of video game concepts where you have the premise of it and you can explore it. It's kind of like the Lego movie. You know, when you hear of just the concept Lego movie, you're like, oh, what are they going to do with that? But in the hands of the right people, you turn it into an amazing thing. So we'll see.
One more horror thing I want to mention. They're going to remake Nosferatu. Now, they've already remade it once. Werner Herzog remade it. And, you know, it's not... I mean, I love Nosferatu, and I think the fact that it was already remade and that basically it's the illegal adaptation, the unauthorized adaptation of Dracula, you know, kind of makes it cool and everything. But do you think we need yet another remake of?
I don't know. I mean, it feels like there's only so many vampire stories people want to tell, and that's one of them. Yeah, I mean, I echo your.
Also, they did Shadow of the Vampire too. Was about the making of Nosferatu.
Shadow of the Vampire, by the way, if you haven't seen it, is just
an interesting
tour de force for Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
He is amazing in that movie. Eddie Izzard's in that movie.
Malkovich.
Yeah, Malkovich. It's a. I didn't think it was like a super great movie, but Malkovich.
But it's an interesting
Willem
film.
Dafoe is like, really good in it.
Yeah, and it makes you read up on the original stuff. Also, you know, recently F.W. Murnau, the director of Nosferatu, his head was stolen from his grave.
I thought you were gonna be like, he's attached to.
Yeah, I'm still alive.
He's been attached to Morbius.
Yeah, he's been attached to some.
Yeah. So his head was stolen. We're just gonna.
Yeah, that happened.
I mean, that's so weird.
Crazy Germans.
I years ago when they were doing the Texas Chainsaw Massacre reboot, I grew up in Wisconsin, really near where Ed Gein was doing his business, his psycho stuff, And
Literally
so,
psycho because he was an
literally
influence
psycho.
on Norman Bates.
So, and he influenced Texas Chainsaw. I actually think that Texas Chainsaw is a much better analog. Well, maybe not actually, because he kind of did his things in secret, and yeah. So I went to visit several areas. Like when I was back home visiting, I took my video camera. Went to visit several areas out where he lived in Plainfield, and I visited the cemetery and I visited the bar where he did. He didn't really murder that many people, but he did one in this bar, and then went to where his home used to be. And by the way, very, very difficult to see anything on that property because nobody wants.
Yeah, they don't want trespassers.
His tombstone had been taken from somebody, and nobody replaced it. So the plot was there, and nobody replaced it. Like, it had been defaced several times, I guess.
Yeah. Did you ever see the Hitchcock movie with Hopkins where they have him interacting with Michael Wincott as Ed Gein?
Yeah, I watched that. That wasn't a great movie, but also kind of interesting in that, like, he was sort of calling back to Ed Gein, you know?
Yeah, they were at least acknowledging that influence on him.
Yeah, it's really weird how far that sort of original like creepy serial killer grave robber thing has gone in our pop culture. How many people have sort of latched onto that. But it was actually really, really like kind of physically chilling to be in these spots and know what had happened there and stuff. And I'd never really done that. I'm not like super big into true crime, but I was like, oh, this is interesting because it is literally 20 minutes from my house, and I'd never gone there. So
now you kind of understand a bit about why the Whitey Bulger stuff for me growing up in Boston is, you know, and especially as it was happening and everything. The new trailer for Black Mass dropped, so I got it on the brain. But let's move on and talk about some spy movie stuff that's going on. Well, let's start with the word. Well, okay, you give me a Bond cue, fine. I'm going to go with the Bond thing first. Rumor has it that Ellie Goulding is doing the theme song for Spectre, and it's not your theme song. Spectre, everybody Spectre. It's not going to be that, folks.
It should be that, though. We all know that.
The rumor is that it's her song Spy that she recently recorded.
I don't know how that song goes. So.
Oh, it's not out yet. That's why.
Well, nobody knows how that song goes. I still have a chance. Fingers crossed. Let's start a petition.
It's no Quantum of Solace, though.
In the quantum of solace.
Any chance I have to make him sing, I usually take that.
Megatron.
I just do it. Here we go. All the old chestnuts and one easy collection right here. So
they need to scroll by the screen really fast.
She also, though, she had exactly the time for 4 easy payments in 1995. But she also, Ellie Goulding also had hits on this year doing one for 50 Shades of Grey. So I mean, she'll have a back-to-back there. But that's a tough act to follow Adele with, you know, she won the Oscar for Skyfall, you know?
And that's a great song.
I love that song.
Yeah.
But Tommy Lee Jones is reportedly going to be in the next Bourne movie, the one that brings back Greengrass and Damon. And, you know, he'll be probably playing the latest in a long line of, you know, evil men in suits. You know, you've had like David Strathairn, you had Chris Cooper, Brian Cox, so now you got.
That's why I don't wear a suit, man. I'm worried about it. I don't want to become evil. Yeah, I don't want to become evil.
And then finally, Tom Cruise, on the eve of Mission Impossible Rogue Nation opening up this weekend, said that Mission Impossible 6 aims to shoot next year. We'll talk more about that next week. Yeah. Well, we'll see how it does this weekend, which leads us to how will it do this weekend, Chris?
I really think
it's tracking it around high 50s, which be about on par with Mission Impossible 2, which opened with 57. Still the highest grossing domestic entry in that franchise with 215 million. However, Ghost Protocol, the biggest one worldwide with 695 million. Just under 6.
They're doing a really good job marketing this movie with him in just everything is geared toward action.
They want you to know that he did all those stunts. But I don't think anybody.
And who doesn't? I mean, I feel like everybody's impressed by that. It's not like you're sitting around. No, somebody on The View like called him out. Like, I could do the stunts. Oh, Sharon Osbourne called him out. She's like, I could do his stunts. I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure you couldn't Sharon Osbourne. Sorry, I'm not trying to start a war of words here, but I think Tom's maybe better capable of doing that. So how will it do? I think high 50s. I think it's going to do maybe 57.
Okay.
And then nothing else really of
Well,
note.
Vacation is opening up. It's already actually open, and it's doing okay. It's tracking to be, and again, this is for the weekend when it'll already been out a couple of days.
Right.
But it's tracking to be about second place with like 17 million. However, even though we gave it a positive review, it is getting trashed. Like, people seem to really hate this movie.
Yeah.
Look, I love the vacation movies too, but I'm surprised at the level of vitriol being spewed at. Like, it's like they took a Christmas Story or something and turned it into, suddenly it's like The Hangover.
I think everybody's getting too many good movies now.
So.
These mediocre movies are getting killed in reviews lately.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen Vacation.
I'm still going to go see it.
From the negative reviews I've seen, it's like a lot of people think the scatological stuff goes too far.
Are just people... All right, I'm going to stick my neck out here. Are people... These are the ones that grew up with it. Have they now transitioned to being old and crotchety when you're going to complain about poop jokes?
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't these have been the same people who would have loved Dumb and Dumber when it came out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends. I don't know. I mean, I think some people are just like over that trend that happened in the 90s, that happened long ago now, this sort of shock stuff. I think if done responsibly, a good poop joke is still great because honestly, everybody poops. It's got to be funny sometimes, Like, I still
love that bit in was it Hall Pass of all movies where it's the girl in the shower and it hits the wall. It's like a shotgun blast.
Hall Pass. Yeah, the single grossest poop
or is
gag.
That Horrible Bosses? One of those.
The single grossest poop gag I think I've ever seen in any movie was when Stifler ate the poop in American Wedding.
Yeah,
and I
we're
was
going
like,
to lunch after this
I was
too.
like, I couldn't handle that one. I like gagged when I first saw it. I was like, oh.
That's
so sometimes
awful.
I can see where people's buttons would be pushed by that. Button. Who's got the button? Anyway, so that's my prediction for the weekend. Yeah, number one will be Mission Impossible 57, and then I think, you said 17 for Vacation. So, yeah, I think if we're not counting Wednesday and Thursday.
Accurate. Yeah, and then I think Ant-Man will be third. Now, just before we wrap up, I'm just curious. Vacation, the latest kind of '80s remake. We've had a lot of them. Like, what's your particular favorite '80s remake? We had mentioned Poltergeist a little while back, and that's
not
nobody's. I would have to say it doesn't really work as much as I would have liked. But I the Miami Vice movie. I know it's a TV show, but in terms of actual '80s movies that got remade.
An actual movie that got remade from the '80s, it's tough. Nothing is like super springing to mind. I'm sure like we'll turn the camera off and we'll turn the mics off, and 1 second later I'll be like, oh, this one. I actually really like what they did with Jump Street, even though that's an adaptation from TV. And I loved the Brady Bunch movie when that first came out, even though that's not '80s. It's like I was watching it in the '80s, and I liked what they did with that.
Yeah.
I think the comedic take on something where you're turning it a little bit. Even Miami Vice kind of went the other way, and I liked the Miami Vice.
Well, the Miami
movie too.
Vice, though, TV series was dramatic. I mean, it was a noir show.
Yeah.
But here's actually on that point, they're rebooting Shaft.
Yeah.
And Shaft, was a gritty street thing, and they're going to do it as an action comedy. So basically, they're going to turn it into Black Dynamite.
Right.
I don't know how I feel about that. I kind of feel like I feel like it kind of, for me, it kind of peaked with Jump Street. I feel like Jump Street gets by on the Lord and Miller's talent.
Yeah.
And the chemistry of Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum.
For sure.
But otherwise, I've seen the comedic riff on things like Starsky and Hutch, I Spy, all that. Like, I kind of feel like going the let's make fun of this thing that people loved is kind of I don't know. I'm not a fan of that. We're leaving it at that. All right. Well, on that subdued note, we're going to wrap it up here. Follow us on Twitter at Chris Carl, at Jim Vivda. Let us know your thoughts on what we talked about in the comments below. And for all things movies, keep it here on IGN.